Welcome back to another WEP Alumni Spotlight. We've got Austin Lacy with us today. And Austin, thanks for joining us. We're happy to have you on.
Absolutely, man. It's a lot of fun to come back and talk to you guys.
I want to get started because I don't think I've heard this story. I've worked with you a handful of times. I know Jake and Daniel have worked with you a little bit more, but how did you get started at WEP and kind of what was that process for you getting on board here?
Well, I actually originally started at the very tail end of the AUHD days before War Eagle Productions actually became an entity that was within the university, and it was still kind of half run by Daktronics. But and then as that semester went on, that was when the SEC network came in and they were building that control room right up. So I kind of got in right before everything blew up in terms of, so it was perfect timing really in terms of getting in right when everything was kind of exploding and the amount of work that our crew as a group did over the course of a year. I got in right on kind of the ground floor of that, and it was a lot of fun to take off and kind of experience them building the program from scratch.
Was broadcast something you always wanted to do, or did you kind of figure it out once you got on the AUHD and later WEP?
I think working in athletics or sports was always something I was particularly interested, and then because I was always trying to see what contacts I could use in the to get into the athletic department to do something in some capacity. I didn't know if that was working on the TV show side or working specifically for the team doing like their video or the live production, which is what I ended up doing. And it was only after that I started doing the live stuff I was like, oh, this is where I want to be.
And it always replay for you, or they kind of take a little bit? You go start camera. What was that kind of like
No,
position wise?
it took a little bit, like pretty much like anybody. Your first kind of go around, you're gripping, you're coiling cables. I did basically a basketball and gymnastics season, doing all of that. And then when it came to baseball, softball season, they obviously don't even have those positions, so they kind of have to find another place for you if you want to keep working. And so I ended up doing a little bit of camera stuff. I worked some as the highlight editor. Back in the first season, they had a spot just for the editor to make like the YouTube highlights afterwards, and that was going on like you were doing that during the game. So I did a few of those, and then I did some replays. And I mean, you can go back and ask people. I wasn't good at replays. Like, it was a rough go for the first year. Part of it was I really did not like the machine that I was on, and getting into the new control room and changing what we were working on like totally changed. Basically my career trajectory. But as far as ending up choosing replay, I remember the last time I think I ever worked camera was a week where it was spring break and nobody was here, right? Everybody, like, that's always the toughest week for Warrior Productions to crew, because just everybody's gone and there's basketball or baseball and softball going on at the same time. There's just not enough people to crew, and so we were already down to only a 3-camera show, and I had to be one of the camera guys, and I had never done the outfield camera position before. It was literally the first time I was doing it. It was on spring break. It was only a 3-camera show. And it was during a severe wind advisory on a platform that I was kind of afraid for my life that like it would like tip over, because it was scaffolding, but then it was just like a chipboard, or I guess it's chipboard. I don't know exactly what it's called, like plank that the camera's just on. And I remember at one point, like I think like my camera was shaking, and the director Michael asked me, Austin, is it that windy out there, or are you just like shaking? I'm like, both. So I'm pretty sure that was the last time I ever worked camera. And then I kind of did some spot, replay and editing stuff the rest of that baseball season, and then I was used as the replay, as one of the 2 replay people that football season the next fall, and then after that I pretty much never did anything other than replay.
So obviously here, as you just said, you did a lot of replay. We were talking to Kevin earlier, and he was talking about the 2017 football season because it was you on replay, Kevin, and Blake, and he was just talking about how that season you just all bounced off one another. So, kind of, what was that season like coming in when you go, oh, we're very experienced. This should be a breeze.
We're loaded.
Yeah, you know, when you think about having three people on replay, not just in terms of how much replay experience the three of us had in that situation, but also the fact that Blake and Kevin had done a ton of producing. I hadn't produced, but to the fact that Jake, I think you produced that season, right?
I think it was Trey.
Oh, you know what? You're right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I think that was Trey.
So Trey produced.
I would have loved to. Don't get me wrong.
But to have that many like kind of heads in the room that had been in the producer chair made it that much stronger. And I think you, and even if you want to go the graphics route too, weren't you and Garrett doing graphics that season?
Yeah.
When Trey was producing.
Yeah.
We basically had 4 producers between the graphics and the replay ops in that room, which is an incredibly just deep and like luxury that we just don't have on a normal basis. And top it off with the fact that it ended the way it did with the Georgia and Alabama games. Like, you know, we had a good season all year, but the level that we took it to when we were playing the number 1 team in the country back to back, I guess, games, because there was a bye week in between or something. But we played number 1 Georgia, beat them, played number 1 Alabama, beat them, and the stadium was rocking. We were playing every crowd prompt imaginable. We were like hounding the guy who plays the music to play Soulja Boy against Georgia because of the thing that they did like a decade ago. Like it was pandemonium. And I mean, people called it an out of body experience. Like afterwards, we were sitting around like, what just happened?
Yeah.
So that's definitely, if you were going to ask me about one of my favorite memories, I think that run that we had with that season is definitely up there. The other one that I would say was really up there that feels a lot like in terms of our replay depth was I forget what year it was, but we had a softball run. It's probably 2015, maybe 2014, where we did regionals and super regionals because Auburn's softball team was really good that year. And our replay team was Kevin, myself, and Gavin, who I think left after that year. And that was another one of those times where it felt like the 3 of us were the 3 replay guys the entire season that year. And we
probably because you were.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like that. Like there might have been some ones where Kevin was producing, but I think that was mainly Garrett producing that year. Yeah. And so it felt like we had a chemistry of knowing what each other wanted, what we were asking for. And I remember the ESPN producer, multiple compliments that he was able to give to us about like the difference in being able to just sell replays and be a good operator versus the way that we worked as a team was something that was really big for us. And the other thing that I really remember about that series, just from a group's, not specifically replay standpoint, but from a group production standpoint and being really proud of what War Eagle Productions had built, was the fact that I think it was like a coordinating producer for ESPN had basically told us during these super regionals, where there's like 8 super regionals happening at the same time, where the lead softball producer for ESPN was at another site, who, the guy that does the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City and all that stuff. He was at another site, and he was watching our production and upset that Auburn's truck had gotten more resources than his was, and the smirk that the coordinating producer had when she got to tell him that wasn't a truck, that was a control room university production, and that they have two Mo cameras and an 8-camera production, and we're doing all these replays and all these Super Mo billboard beds, and with all the reacts and stuff. Like that was really, really satisfying. That's not a me thing. That was an us thing of getting to feel like we really earned, like, based on our merit, what we did that year.
Mm.
And you mentioned building because you got to be a part of that. What were those early days like? I knew from Missouri trying to build that program up. Auburn was one that we looked at, and that was like, hey, we got to be just as good or better than Auburn. So what was that process like as you guys built? Those early years, long hours, I'm sure, to get to a moment like that you get that kind of payoff and that compliment.
I think the process was mainly that we came in with a mindset, and this started with our director, Michael Sullivan, every day of like, we don't care that this is a Tuesday baseball game at 6 o'clock against, I don't want to offend any schools, but like Appalachian State or something. Like, it's like it doesn't matter to us that this is not a big game that's on ESPN. We treated the Tuesday Wednesday out of conference baseball series, or the softball series that's midweek, as if it was those super regional. We were going to be able to get 6 cameras that day. We were going to have 6 cameras that day. We were going to have the Supermo camera. Like, as far as resources, they gave us the resources to make it feel like it was a bigger game. And we then were given the expectations as well of like, we aren't okay with people making these mistakes because, oh, it's not an important game. We ran at 11 every day, and it caused problems sometimes that we were running on like an 11 difficulty because that was the plan. So that when an ESPN producer came in and ran it at 9, we were like, yeah, we got this. Then we were in charge. So I think it was that level of intensity and level of like attention to detail of deciding that it didn't matter whether it was the super regional that's on ESPN, like the mothership, and we got put on ESPN, or it was a Tuesday baseball game that was non-conference and that probably like the players' families were watching and nobody else. Like, we came in with the mindset every day that we were going to put on the best show possible, because that was what we were building toward. We were doing those shows so we could do the ones on ESPN. That was kind of the mindset we had going in every day. And when you talk about, when I said that the three, me, Kevin, and Gavin, pretty much worked every softball game or baseball and softball game that year, that included those days where it was like a Tuesday and I had class at 3 o'clock and I had to ask my professor if I could leave 30 minutes early in class to get there because I cared about it that way. So that was, it was that level of commitment on, the entire way. And every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all season, it's a lot of Friday nights that you might rather be doing something else. And, you commit to it and you get the payoff at the end of getting the big, super regional playoff game that ends up being amazing.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. So obviously you started doing replay here, but you went from here and applied it at other places. So just kind of talk about the places you are currently working at now.
Yep. So I would say 95% of my work comes from 2 places. Both are in Atlanta. One is Turner Broadcasting, which does a lot of different things, but mainly what I work on is NBA TV. It's, just like the SEC Network or the NFL Network, all NBA specific. It's 7 days a week. During the NBA season, there's usually 3 to 4 operators, EBS needed per day. That's, 7 days a week. And we've got about 10 people in our rotation. And then in the NBA offseason, there's virtually nothing going on. And then the other I guess client I have, since I'm a freelancer, is Bally Sports, which for those who have watched the Braves or the Hawks for a long time, you would recognize it as like Fox Sports South. And the name changed at the start of this baseball season, so it's still kind of new. But it's either I'm working NBA TV or at Hawks and Braves games. And that's 95% of stuff. And every now and then I'll get an exciting, Fox, the big national Fox is doing a Braves game, or ESPN's doing Sunday Night Baseball, or, hey, we need you to travel to do the Nashville Predators hockey game. And that makes up the last 5% where I'll get an exciting, or hey, TNT needs a replay operator for game 4 of the second round for Hawks Sixers, which was an unbelievable thing to get to work. It was amazing. So you get those random things that pop up every now and then that are a lot of fun to do, but mostly I'm working on NBA TV as a studio show. So not doing replays of games, but doing highlights, and it kind of feels like Sports Center, but NBA specific, and then doing replays for either the Braves games or the Hawks games.
What's been fun for me is to see when you'll go do those games and then you'll come back to Auburn like, all right, hey, I just saw this. I'm going to put this 7-shot slow-mo package together. No clue how I'm going to do it yet, but I'm just going to figure it out. Is that something you've always kind of just randomly, I see this, I'm going to do it kind of thing?
Well, part of it is getting to see when you get to work those big games, or even the Braves games. Like the lead guy for Braves is a freaking wizard on the replay machine that we use. And one thing I should mention is, at Auburn we use what's called a Dreamcatcher, which is just a brand of replay machine. And ever since I moved to Atlanta, both Turner and Bally's use EVS, which is a different brand, but it's similar. It's old. It's kind of the more older established brand, and Dreamcatcher is kind of the one challenging it. And so it was a little bit of a transition switching. Imagine just having used PCs your whole life and then having to use a Mac. Like it's still, you're using a computer, but then there's still some differences. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Just taking what you've seen from some of these big shows and then wanting to apply to what you're doing now.
So getting to watch the guys that have been doing it for 20 years and seeing the things that they make. And it's like, oh, there are times where I'm in the truck where I was like, oh, I could do that job. But then there's times where somebody makes something that has music and announcer calls and the back cracks all mixed in together, and it was all done on a replay machine. And I didn't think that was possible on a replay machine. I thought you had to take it into Avid and edit it and then import it in. And so to see their process and to go, oh, that's where I need to get. And so then I would, and at the opportunities that I would mess around and try to do the same things and get better. It's like any other thing. You see, you're just trying to get better at your craft and seeing what you can do, because anytime that you can bring something to a show that hasn't been, brought before, it's something that you can add value.
It's great you mentioned that also, because I wanted to bring up the one I remember from you doing, and the times that we've worked together is the tip-off of tumors. You did that as an on-site edit, and I'll tell you right now, I've used that when I've talked to classes and been like, hey, there's different ways to tell stories. You can have graphics, you can have live replays, you can have edited pieces. I go, or you can have a edited piece that was done in replay. And I share that. And I remember when you did that and just how you incorporated the music that we had and all that. It just stuck with me ever since then. And so I guess maybe talk a little bit about your process and how you came up with stuff, or when you see something, what are you looking for to make a package like that?
Well, it's always about and this is the same as any editor, right? You're looking at what you have and a lot of times what you don't have. Like if the announcer call sucks, it's like, okay, I'm not using an announcer call. We're just going to do it with music. But if you get a good announcer call, you'd be like, oh, I could edit the play to the announcer call. And then there's multiple. And then if you have a good music cut a lot of this stuff is just relying on it being on your machine. Like if you have music that's been given to you and you're like, ooh, I like this one, and this fits the moment. If there was a tense moment and there was a walk-off hit, and you have music that it has like a slow build-up and is intense, and that at a certain point, like there's a really hard like beat drop, you can build like faces and intensity in the batter in the box and the pitcher set all the way up until like the beat drops on the hit, and then you hear the call of like swing and a drive or whatever, and it ends up being really good. But ultimately, if you hear the good call and you have the music, and you basically, and this is kind of, any editor kind of thinks this way, is you kind of have it in your head where you want to go with it, and you can kind of picture it, and then you have to just start building it. The tough part about building on replay is that you can't just you can't take all the pieces and manipulate them all individually like you can in a nonlinear editor like Premiere or Avid, where if I have a good announcer call, but I have to edit part of it to where we take out a long bit of silence, or maybe the one guy starts talking and then the other guy starts talking, and you want to take out the other guy talking, and you want to get back to when the first guy gets back in the conversation. You only want to have him, and you want to butt those two together. You have to do all of the audio editing before you start working on the video. So that's a challenge that, and again, that's something that I see somebody doing, and he has the entire call edited the way he wants it, basically saves it to himself so it's now a clip, and then he can work with that audio and put video over the top of it. But he can't have multiple video pieces in a playlist and multiple audio pieces in the same time. So he has to edit the audio and be completely done with the audio before you even start thinking about the video. So there are certain challenges to editing on a replay machine, which is still pretty much a linear editor, as opposed to a nonlinear editor like Premiere or Avid, that you kind of have to have it in your head before you get working on it and actually make the product.
So how do you view your trips to Auburn now? Because I want to say you're using almost like a training ground, but you're coming here to try something new that maybe you don't want to try yet on Bally, or are you really coming like, hey, I'm just gonna show out, and whatever I do, it is what it is.
It might be a little bit of a show, because I have done like those things that that I've talked about, where I've done something above and beyond. Like I've gone to Turner and I've done things that were not asked of me. It was like, hey, I have this, this edited piece of the, I did one for, I think it was game 1 of the playoffs when Chris Middleton hit, it was Jimmy Butler hit a buzzer beater to take it to overtime, and then Chris Middleton hit the game winner. In overtime. And I kind of edited those two together. It was quick cuts, a lot of different angles, had the call on it. And it wasn't something that anybody asked for, and it's not something that our position is usually responsible for, like doing artsy stuff. We're more of like nuts and bolts, like, you're playing this out, you're editing these 3, you're putting these 3 clips in a playlist in 30 seconds, and then we go. The high level edits are usually done, because it's a studio show, by nonlinear editors. But that I made it just for me to practice, because I was seeing what other people were doing, and I was like, hey, I made this thing, if you guys want to run it. And I showed the producer, and we hit play, and he's like, yeah, we'll put it in, the C block or whatever.
Butler with the heat down 2. Butler for the tie. Lays it in. Jimmy buckets. We have overtime. Crowd rising to its feet. Middleton with 2. Middleton. You bet. He got it with 0.5 to go. Chris Middleton puts the Bucks up
2. To come on the air in the C block. So it's just stuff like that, where you are doing stuff for you to kind of mess around. And part of the reason I do it, I've done it at Auburn too, is because, I feel like, even though I started on Dreamcatcher, I am more proficient on EVS now. I've worked way more shows with them. And, I do 3 shows on Dreamcatcher a year at this point, at most. And so if there's ever a show where I need to know Dreamcatcher and actually need to do that stuff, it's nice to know I've gone to Auburn and I've done those same things that I can do on EBS. I know I can do them on Dreamcatcher too, because there's a little bit different of a workflow.
For sure. That's one of the best parts too, is you are now introducing these other students who've never seen a freelance guy like you come in and build this stuff. Now it's two kids like, wait a second, this is what they're out there doing. This is what I'm competing with out there in the real world. How much do you value or just love almost being like a coach to those guys when you're in that role then?
I really like it. Most of the replay operators that we would come in and work, most everybody knows how to build a 3-play package of a guy that had a good first half. And at halftime, we're going to come out, we're going to show 3 looks, or 3 of his buckets. It's going to be 15 seconds. And we need, his 3, his layup, and whatever. And you make sure you mix up the angles. You get the best angle from each shot. The front end goes on the front of it. Like, pretty much everybody knows how to do that. Mm-hmm. There's not much that I can, show them in terms of that. But there are those other things of hey, you can put music on this clip by using an aux clip, and then you can cut your highlights to the music if you want to. And that's just next level stuff where, you work on your craft. And so to be able to get to show people that there is just more to replay than rolling when they say roll and building a 3-play highlight package. Those are kind of things that I really, enjoy getting to do when I go back there.
Okay, so we talked about kind of that 2017 season. So let's take that out. Do you have a favorite 1 or 2 games or memories from your time here?
Well, I talked about the 2017 season, and I talked about that softball run that we had. Those were both very very group-oriented successes, right? I do have one particular memory that is something that I guess is nostalgic for me personally, because it was my specific replay that did it. But I think it was it 2014? No, it was later than that. Maybe 2016. It was an LSU football game. And Auburn fans will remember this.
I already do. LSU
had a play where they thought they won it on the last play of the game. And we went back and saw that they did not get the snap off in time. And so the previous play is under review, the referees go over, and we're trying to find looks of the camera shots that have the play clock that the quarterback can see in the camera, and there aren't any. And I end up going and getting the angle, which is usually just recorded by the TV broadcast that we don't have, but we're recording the TV broadcast show. So they're replaying something, and I go and get the replay from their show, which is, you see their basic broadcast, camera 1, the wide shot, with the game clock in the bottom right-hand corner, and you see it go to 0 before the ball snap. And so, I'm I've got camera 1 with clock is basically what we were calling out. And we roll that. And I actually still have the video of the TV broadcast at this time. The roar of the crowd when the clock went to 0 and the ball hadn't been snapped yet, because we basically knew even before the referees had come out and said, the play's been overturned, Auburn wins, the whole stadium basically knew, and the coach was Malzahn was reacting, the players were reacting too. The roar of the crowd, you couldn't even hear the referee announcing that Auburn had won the game, because I had already rolled the replay and it had already gone to 0, and everybody in the stadium already knew. And it's the closest I will ever feel to hitting the game-winning shot or making the game. It's never going to get closer than that. So because something that I did, and when the clock went to 0, the place went nuts. And so it was really, really cool to be the one to get that replay in that spot. It could have been anybody, but yeah, that's a moment that I'm going to remember.
You don't know when the ball comes up. You know when the quarterback steps back. And now Auburn appears to be celebrating.
After review, the ruling is that the offense did not get the snap off prior to the clock.
We have had a cataclysmic reversal on the field for LSU. Auburn are the victors.
The crowd didn't only go nuts, the control room went nuts. I remember TV, we were going crazy in there.
Those are things, though, you'll never forget. So
right.
You'll never forget moments in an Iron Bowl. You'll never forget moments in a Georgia game. Those will, for no matter how long we are here, after we retire, we're gonna go, God, you remember that game in 2016? We played LSU. Like, you're always gonna have those moments, and that's part of why we still do this. You know, at least for me, that's why I'm here.
Yep.
Yeah, for you, we've been asking this for multiple people throughout these, but what's some advice you'd give to someone that's starting out at War Eagle Productions as they try to figure out what they want to do, whether it's replay, camera, or realize what they don't want to do? What's some advice you give them as they get started with War Eagle Productions?
One thing with War Eagle Productions that was, I think, really valuable, I talked about getting to do editing and replay and camera all in that first season, is I would try to make sure that you try as many things as possible while you are there to find the thing that you end up being like, oh, this is what I want to do. A lot of places are not interested in training you or letting you, figure out what you want to do. That's the place. So War Eagle Productions is the place to do that, because they're not going to be like, hey, you want to try a game on camera for the Braves? No, they're not going to do that. They're only going to do people that have done camera for other places and that have like a camera reel or anything else. So War Eagle Productions is the place to try post-production, try being a camera operator, try being a replay, try graphics. And there's probably going to be 3 things you're like, oh, God, that was awful. I don't want to do that again. Or maybe there's, and then there's maybe the one that you're like, okay, this is what I want to do. And there's different positives and negatives to all of it, right? Like, if you're a big stats junkie, then graphics is the place to be, right? If you're somebody that doesn't like the intensity of the live production, which I love, like the adrenaline rush of going on the air is something that, like, when we had a summer break, right, and Auburn was the only thing I was doing, I felt like I was addicted. Like, I would, like, the first show coming back and the rush I would feel, I was like, is this what, like, people with addictions feel? But some people get in those live environments where it's like you need it in 2 seconds, and they don't like that. They want to be the one that's, getting it frame by frame right in post-production, which is you need both. So I would say the one thing to make sure you do is always, when you're at War Eagle Production, just try as much as you can until you find the thing that you're like, oh yeah, this is the one.
Couldn't agree more.
Awesome, man. No, that's some great advice, and we'll definitely be using that clip a little bit down the road here. We appreciate it, man. Anything we missed that you wanted to hit on before we wrap this thing up?
I guess one other piece of advice I would throw out there is, if you're going to do sports, right, if this is something that you want to do, and I hear all the time people, oh my gosh, it's so, it must be so much fun to love what you do and all of this stuff. I think I've worked like all but like one Friday night since December. It is a time commitment. Sports are on when other people want to hang out. They are on weekends. They are on at night. They are on holidays. And just because it's not that you have to start off doing the weekend shifts and then once you get established, then you don't have to do that stuff anymore. It's that the lead EVS operator for Fox and for CBS are working Thanksgiving every year on football. And the lead replay operator for TNT and ESPN are working Christmas every year. So if you value that, the social life, that's something to think about before you get into it, because and we were talking about all those Tuesday baseball games and Friday night soccer games that were the night before a football game. And, we were there till 11 o'clock and then we're there at 6. It's a business that's full of people that are passionate about it because it has to be.
I don't think anybody said any better. We've talked on multiples of these, it's a family. And because, let's be honest, we see each other more than we probably see our our family. So whether that says more about us than anything, I don't know. But again, we appreciate you, man, jumping on and chatting with us. I know it was great catching up, and we're looking forward to having you back for some events this year.
Good seeing you guys.
War Eagle.
War Eagle.